Hey y'all, welcome to lesson 1. In this video, in this lesson, I am going to be focusing on the definition of habit, what habit is, and what are the components of the habit loop, and why you should care. I want you to walk away from today's lesson with a crystal clear understanding of the components of the habit loop. I think that's the biggest takeaway of the lesson. I talked about in the intro the importance. We'll revisit that again today. But if you don't walk away with anything else, the one thing I want you to walk away from today's lesson is being able to define habit, to know what the 2 key characteristics of habit are, and to understand the 3 components of the habit loop. So the definition of habit. Habit is defined as a usual way of behaving, something that someone does often in a regular or repeated way, and also an acquired mode of behavior that has become nearly or completely involuntary. That third definition is something that I really like. So the 2 key components of habit is something that happens regularly, so frequently, and automatically. Now, I think in general, the word habit has kind of gotten a bad rap. You know, when you think about habits, you tend to focus on the bad habits, a smoking habit, a drinking habit, etc. The thing about habit is that we actually evolved to have habits in our lives to really save our brain power. So a lot of the things that we do every day, think about when you wake up and brush your teeth and wash your face. Now think about if instead of going through that process automatically, you had to think about every single step that's required in brushing your teeth, washing your face, and getting dressed for the day. By the time you got into your car and to head into the office, you'd be completely wiped out. So over time, the human body has evolved to rely on these habits so that our brain power can be reserved for higher thinking, higher order tasks. So habits were always made to serve us. Habit and routine, they were always meant to be helpful. So again, to recap, habit, the 2 key characteristics of habit are something that happens frequently, so frequency, and automatically, or without thought. Now let's get into the components of a habit. So what does a habit consist of? A habit consists of 3 main parts. Any single habit can be broken down to these 3 parts. There are no exceptions. The first thing is the cue. This is something that triggers or cues the habit itself to be performed. The 2 most common triggers are time and location. That's why you find that, you know, after dinner, let's say you kind of have a habit of having a glass of wine. The main triggers to that habit of are time, after dinner, and location, at home. I bet you'll find when you are not at home, not eating at home, often you don't even think about that glass of wine or think about whatever that habit is after dinner. Let's say it's having a sweet treat. So again, the most common triggers, the most common cues are time and location. So when we're designing our habits, those are things that you can play around with if you're trying to implement or break a habit. The second component is the habit itself. We think of this typically as an action, so it's what we do after we take in the trigger. One thing I always like to have people remember is that our thought patterns are also habits. So habits are not just actions. They can be your thoughts, what you allow into your mental space as well. And then the reward. There's always a reward. There's always a payoff. That reward may not always seem obvious. It may not even be what you might consider a positive reward, but it is a reward and it is the payoff. It's that feeling, that outcome that is desirable. What drives this circle, what drives this habit loop is craving. And the more ingrained a habit gets, the more that craving starts to show up and fuel that cycle. When a habit is really truly ingrained, so you've done it over and over and over and over and again, it's very automatic. You'll begin craving that reward before you even consciously recognize the trigger. That's what makes habits so difficult to break oftentimes, because that craving is just a constant thing. And what we know is that over time, your defense mechanisms just weaken. And so as long as that craving is there, it becomes very hard to ignore it. And eventually we give into it. One of the helpful things, just understanding these components of habits and how they work. One of the benefits to just having the knowledge of having it is being able to identify it, right? Being able to name it, being able to say, okay, this feeling that I have is it's just a craving. It's just a craving because this is a habit that I've done. An example from my life is bubble tea. Are you guys familiar with bubble tea? Bubble tea is sometimes it's like a milk tea or a slushy or just a plain tea, and it has tapioca pearls at the bottom. If you've heard of it, people generally either, love it or they hate it. They're like, what is this thing that I'm biting in my drink? Anyway, long story short, for me, after work, I have a favorite bubble tea spot, and it has truly become a habit for me. And when it got very much ingrained, is when I started thinking about stopping at Fat Straws to get bubble tea on the way home from work. But I'd be thinking about it even before lunch came. And this is something that I do at the end of the day. So initially my trigger really was like most triggers, time and location. Time after work, location as I'm heading down the tollway, getting close to Plano, in the exit where the store is. And then over time, as I started doing this more and more, I noticed that craving would happen earlier and earlier. It no longer was something I thought about just after I left the office. It was something I was starting to think about early in the day. But being able to name it and identify that what was happening really gave me the power to say, okay, I know what this is. It'll pass. Because, you can't drink bubble tea every day and fit into your pants. Let me just tell you. So I think you are pretty well set on the definition of habit, as well as the components of the habit or the habit loop, the cue, the habit itself, and the reward or the payoff. And then, like we just talked about with my bubble tea example, the craving is what drives that habit loop. That's what keeps you on it, right? That's what keeps you coming back for more. That's what helps get it truly ingrained. And we know that just by identifying it and breaking it down, it will give you some power over being able to tweak different parts of that habit loop to break it. If it's a habit that you're trying to break, you just do the reverse if it's a habit that you're trying to implement. So now let's talk a little bit again about the importance of habit, why it is such a big deal. My favorite stat, which I've already said in the intro, you'll probably hear it 3 more times before this online class is over. Almost half of what we do on any given day, we do every day. Habit and routine is a huge part of our life. And when we do anything over and over again without thought, then we truly impact the quality of our lives by the quality of our habits. They go hand in hand. The good thing about that, though, is that anything that you desire in life, any goal that you've established for yourself, any plan, any accomplishment that you could see in your life is possible so long as you implement the right habits and routines. Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that a good thing to understand? Yes, implementing habits, breaking habits, those things can be challenging, but they are possible. And when you break it down to its smallest component and you just, start building those blocks, you begin to realize that you can do it. You can do it. If you can crack the habit nut, then you can achieve all the goals that you've established for yourself. Those 10 or 15 pounds that you want to lose, implement the right habits and routines. That book you want to write, implement the right daily habits and routines. That promotion that you're ready for on your job, implement the right habits and routines in the office. It is possible. You can do it. I believe in you. You should believe in yourself. The fact that you signed up for this course lets me know that you're ready. And so I'm super excited that you are taking this journey. You've already completed the first 2 important steps. 1 is understanding what habit is, and 2, appreciating its importance. In lesson 2, we will talk about the 4 tendencies. I think I teed this up in the intro as well. The 4 tendencies are truly a game changer. At least they were for me. Just being aware of them, being able to understand which tendency I fell into, but I won't give it away. I'll see you in lesson 2. Bye.